Hi, this is Joe Bolen, and welcome to learning about VisualBasic.net. In this series, we've been looking at a text editor project, and we're at this point in our project putting into our menu option the ability to replace text in our text editor. So as we find a phrase or a word in our text that we'd like to replace, we can do a search on it and then change that either by changing that particular selected text we found or by replacing all the text where we match what we're looking for. So let's see about this project and how we did it, and also let's take a look at the documentation where all the project information is taken care of. So let's go out and take a look at where things are stored. The important thing to remember is the code for this project and for other projects that I've created is at pastebin.com/u/jboh. So I ask you to pause your video and write this information down so that you can go out and take a look at the code afterwards and study it in greater detail. Also, you'll see that the image for the main screen is located in Imager, and the other video broadcasts of this particular series and others are at YouTube at Bolen Presents. So please note this and take advantage of it after the video is over to go out and study further. If you have any questions on a particular command, though, go out to MSDN site and take a look at that particular command to find out more about how I used that command. Well, let's take a look at our project. I have up the Visual Studio, and I'm in the Windows Designer area with the MainForm up, and I have the menu tool strip exploded out, and you'll see that we're going to be working on the replace part of this. And the replace is very much like the find, and you'll see the code very similar, and I'll show you about that in just a second. Also, our form that we're going to be using is almost identical to our form that we used for the find. The difference being this form has been changed to add a replace with label and a text box for input, and also we've added the replace and replace all buttons. Otherwise, it's exactly the same as the find form that we used. In fact, what I did was I came up to the FindTextForm in the Solution Explorer. I right-clicked on it and chose to copy it. And then I went back up to the text editor and then chose to paste it in place and do a rename. That's all it takes to get this ready to go, and then you can quickly add in the extras for this to make it work. So let's take a look first of all at our main form, and once again we're looking at the replace, and we've already coded in the background this event. Now we're going to take a look at how we changed this in the code for that event. So I'm showing you now the text area, and I'm in the region section, which is the grouping of code that I've grouped for the different options in the edit area of the find next, and the replace. Now, all I've added here is a very similar line of code that I have up above for the find, but I've changed it to use a ReplaceTextForm, and I'm not using a declaration as new ReplaceTextForm, but rather I'm calling a Singleton patterns method of getInstance to create one instance of that form. So we'll look at this in a little bit more, and there is also a video on about the Singleton pattern and how to code for it. So I'm creating one instance of the form, and then I'm hitting the show to make that work. So that brings the form into a focus with this command. Let me also state that the one thing that is also part of this area of the replace area is a variable, the find string, that I declared as public, so that as we do the find or the replace part of our code, we'll keep in track of the particular find text that we're looking for, so that either one of them will have it available in the form when we activate the form. Okay, let's go back and take a look now at the actual form. And we have the text that we want to replace, what we're searching for, what we're going to replace, and the buttons related to it, whether we're going to have match case, whether we're up or down through our text part of our main form. So let's take a look at the code for that. And here you'll see, and I'll bring to your attention too, in the documentation, the actual Imager screen of this form is out there at Imager. So you can take a look at this again if you'd like to take a look at it as it's running. Now, let's take a look at the code. At the class level, since we're using the Singleton method, so we have only one instance of this class, I create a shared variable, my instant, and I create it as the same class that I'm working with, the ReplaceTextForm, which is my class. Initially, I set this value to nothing. So as I come in for the first time and instantiate this class, I'll then see that this is nothing and create it as the class, and then after that I will only use this instance of the class. As we come down, you'll see our private methods. Normally public is declared for subnew, but in this case we're using a privatized method so that only within this program can we initiate the subnew part of our code. This is part of the Singleton method design. Let me come down now to the actual activation where we get the single code for this, or I should say instance of it. As I come down into it, I have a public method where I have a shared function that's been made public called getInstance. And this is what I did back in MainForm. I called this method, and if the situation is that that particular variable that I declared is not instantiated yet, at that point I'll use the new ReplaceTextForm, which is the class. That will then call the subnew method and create a new instance of that. Now if I already have it and I bypass this logic, then I'll just return back my instance, so I have only one instance of this class. That keeps me from having multiple forms on my screen. Now let's take a look at the actual function that's taking place in the code. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top area on that, and what I'm going to do is, when this form is activated, versus like we normally do for a form, load a form, instead of using the load event, we're going to use the activated event, which is because we're hiding and then showing the form. And so we use the activated event to be the trigger for where we actually do some of the things we would normally do in a form load event. So as we come in, I'm going to go out and look at MainForm's public variable FindString. And if it's not empty, then I'm going to pull it in and assign it to my FindTextBox text property in my form. If it is empty, I'll just bypass it. So I'm always going to go out and retrieve my FindTextForm, because I might be coming from another event or from the some area where I've already initialized the FindString that I want to use. Now on the form closing, where we would be hitting the little red X on the form, what I want to do is, instead of allowing the form to close out normally, I want to capture and handle the closing event by changing the eCancel to true, and then I'm going to issue an ME hide to hide this form instead of allowing it to close out. So that's a little bit different part here. We're hiding the form, not closing it out, and so we're interrupting the closing event as we come into the form closing activity to capture and hide it. Also, the cancel button, when we hit the cancel button, will hide the form as well. So both these take place to hide the form instead of allowing it to close out. Now as we look at our form and process it, we hit the Find Next button, and that Next button click event performs the find text. And this is the same procedure that we had in our other form, the FindTextForm class. The difference is we're going to see this is now declared as a private subroutine, not a public one, as it was in the other form class. Now, as we come through, some of the things we want to set is, for example, if I have no data inside my FindTextBox text property, by looking at the length, if it is not there, what I'm going to do is make certain I disable some of the buttons. If I don't have any text to find, of course I'm going to disable the Find Next button. Also, I'll disable the Replace button and the Replace All button. And I will set my public variable FindString to empty. But if I do have text, then I'm going to take my FindTextBox text and put it in my public variable for later use. I'm also going to then set my start of my selection to the very beginning of the text. And then I'm going to turn on my Find Next button so we can actually issue the call to find the text. So part of this is taking place when we actually have text being entered into the Find Text box or being deleted from the Find Text box. Also, we do the same kind of activity when we have data that goes into the Replace Text box and we look at the text change event. Once again, we're going to examine whether we have data. If we do, then we're going to enable the Replace button, and we're also going to enable the Replace All button. And if we do not have any data in the Replace Text box, or it's been deleted, then we want to disable the Replace button and the Replace All button on that by making their enable property to be false. So this is how we control the buttons, whether they're active or inactive in our processing of the data. Now let's take a look at the part where we're doing a replacement of text, and this is what's new in this particular class versus just the FindTextForm class that we had earlier. In this text, what we've done is already found the text, and we have a selected text in our form. So if I have selected text and it's not string empty, then all I'm going to be doing is taking the text that I have, or the phrase, in the Replace Text box and putting it into the selected text that I've had highlighted. That's all it needs to be done. That's very simple there. And then I'm going to set the property of my MainForm, my text box, to true to indicate that I have changed it. Then I'm going to scroll to that location and set the focus now away from this particular form and put it back into the MainForm, my text box area for further editing. And if we want to, we can also do another Find Next again at the end here, so that I'll find the next occurrence after I've done the replacement. That way, if we want to keep going back and replacing more text, we'll just be looping through this section. Now, a situation is I choose also not just to replace the selected text that I've found, but I want to replace all occurrences of text that I'm looking for and want to replace it. So what I'm doing is coming into the Replace All button click event with this. And what I'm going to look at first of all is, do I in fact have the text at all? So I'm going to dimension a variable find position as integer, and if I turn out to not have it, it will return back a -1. If I do have it, then I know I have it in my text box, and I want to do a replacement at that point in time. So what I'm doing is, first of all, looking for whether I'm looking for case sensitivity. In other words, am I trying to match upper and lower case? If my checkbox that I had in my form is set to match case, it'll have a check property of true. and therefore I'm going to take a look and try to find the occurrence of that particular text starting at the beginning position of my text box, and then I'm looking with the extra parameter of the string comparison of ordinal. So I'm looking for case matching at this point. If I do not find it, then I'm going to issue a message to the user I didn't find it, and then I'm going to set the focus back to the MainForm text box and do a select all on it and exit the sub. Now, the thing is, if I do find it though, I'm coming into the else clause, and there I'm using the String.Replace method on it. So I'm taking the replace method, and it's going to look inside the MainForm myTextBox text property. It's going to replace it with the FindTextForm text property on that, and it's going to replace the text on that with the replace text box text, and I'm going to use a compare method binary so that I catch the case sensitivity of my replacement. At that point, I also want to modify my text box to show that it has changed by my replacement, and then I'm going to set the selection area back to the very beginning of my text box so the user can continue on editing or examining the document. So the important thing is I'm using the String.Replace method on that, and you'll see that it takes in the parameter of what you're searching in, what you're trying to find, what you're replacing, and some other parameters in here. But the important thing is, for this particular case, since we're looking for case matching, we're using the compare method of binary. Now, if it turns out that we're not worried about matching the case, then we're going to drop down to this part of the else clause in our nested if statement, and we're going to do a search in this case by using the same index of searching, but this time we're going to use the string comparison of ordinal ignore case. Up above you'll see the difference. So we're making a decision to watch for our case as we're going through and trying to do a find. Once again, if I do not find it, I'll have a -1 returned, and there I'm going to form the user and then exit the sub. If I do find it, once again, I'll be using the String.Replace like I did up here, but the difference is on this String.Replace, the compare method is not binary but text, and because we at this point are not worrying about the case of the letters that we're using in our text box. At that point, once again, we're modifying the or changing the modified property of my text box to indicate that we have changed something in the text box, and we're positioning our cursor in a sense back to the very beginning of the text for the user to continue on editing or monitoring the code. So this is the meat and potatoes of this particular part of the code. We're going through with the index of to search for whether we have the string that we have been looking for, and we're examining whether we're looking for case sensitivity in our match or not. And if we do find it, then we're using the replace method, once again looking for whether we want to worry about case sensitivity, but we're using the String.Replace method in both cases. Here, where we're using it to make certain the case matches, we're using compare method binary as one of our parameters. When we do not care about case matching, then we're using the compare method text. So the important parts of this is to learn about the index of method to search through a text box, and also the String.Replace method that we're using to actually replace the text in the text box. Now, some of you might know about the regular expression, and we can use that as well to replace text. However, in my timing, I found that the regular expression, it was actually just a hair slower Not what I expected, but actually a little slower than the replace method. And the replace method is a little bit easier to understand, and therefore I went with the replace method for our changing of our text in our code. Now, once again, one of the important things was when I hit the find button, I did the find text, which is exactly the same thing as I did in the FindTextForm class. Doing the same thing here. The difference is this has now been coded as a private subroutine, not public, and this is the engine part that actually does the searching through to find the string. We discussed that in our last video when we did the FindTextForm. This is the same code. The difference is I've changed this to private because it's only being called within this class. Where in the other class, the FindTextForm class, I needed to be able to call it from outside the class, and I had to make it public. So we're going through once again and finding our text using that IndexOf method or last IndexOf method to find things in our text, highlighting it if we find it. And you'll see down here, if I do find the information, I'm going to select the text by looking at the found position where I found the text, and then using the length of the text that I was searching for, and then I'm going to scroll to that location and set focus on it. So this allows us to find the text, then we issue the replace. So between looking at the ReplaceTextForm class and the FindTextForm class, we've done a little modification for some extra buttons that we've added with the ReplaceTextForm, and we've also added the replacement part to the class to deal with it. Otherwise, they're the same. And once again, all I did was I came up to my FindTextForm, and I did a right click and chose to copy it. And then once I copied it, I came back up to the main project and then chose to paste it in place, and then did a rename of the form, modified it, and then added the extra sections to the class. Well, we've got everything in place. We've got our ReplaceTextForm all designed. We've got the code behind it all set. And we've also modified our MainForm to call the ReplaceTextForm on it. And we've got everything ready to go. So let's see it run. Okay, we'll bring up our text editor, and I'll bring in a document to work on, and I'm going to bring up the brown fox because it repeats over and over again. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, and I'm going to go up and do a replace. And here's our form coming up, and I'm going to be looking for brown fox. And you'll see right away as I start keying in, because I had now text in the text box, the text change event fired off, and I set the find next button by enabling it. So I can right now find text if I want to click on that. So I'll do that, for example. Here we go. So I can go through and use it just like the find text box on that. So I'm going to come back here to the beginning on that, and this time though I'm going to replace it with red fox on that, and I'm going to hit just replace. And as I started typing, and I'll delete it out and then put it back in, you'll saw that as soon as I keyed it back in, these buttons became active. Now I can do a replace on that. So I'm getting ready to, I found it, ready to replace it, and you'll see it now has changed to red fox. And I can keep going through and replacing one at a time, or I can choose to do a replace all, and all of a sudden all of them will change over to the red fox. Once again, I can come back up here, and this time I'll do a match case, I'm going to look for red fox. I'm going to go red fox to show you the case matches, and we'll change it back to brown fox. Now at this point I should not find any red fox with matching case on it, so I should not be able to find it, and I'll try it. In fact, I'll do a find next, and I cannot find red fox. Reverse direction. Well, I can reverse direction, but it won't make any difference. So I'm going to hit no. Now I'm going to disable match case and do a replace all, and we should be able to replace everything now with brown fox, which we did on that. And so this is the code that we had behind the replace that we've just discussed. This is the form we're using to do that replacement. And you'll also see that if I came up here and try to click on the replace again, I will not get a second form. I'll go back to this form. If I close out this form, I'll basically hide it and bring it right back in place. Also, because we're keeping track of the find string, that's there, and since I basically am just doing a replace, this area is also maintained because we hit everything. We didn't replace it or by closing it out. So we can also come back in and do just a find, and you'll see the find came in and brought in our public variable. I might want to change this now to brown fox on that, and if I close this out and then come into replace, you'll see brown fox came back in because it's part of the public variable, and there it came back in on it. So we can do a change there as well. So we can find next with our replace, or we can also replace it, and we can replace all occurrences on that and take care of our tasks. So at this point we've coded our find next and replace in our project, plus we've also coded the other parts of our menu. We're ready to go into the area of printing. So we'll be looking at the page setup, the print, and print preview in the next series of videos. We'll learn how to do printing, and we'll also then finish up our code by learning how to do some of the little things extra to polish up our code and make it a little bit more professional. Then we'll actually do the deployment of our project so other users can take advantage of working with our brand new text editor. So keep watching and go out there to pastebin.com and take a look at the code, study it, learn how the code works, and keep watching the video series and get your hands dirty in the code. Until next time, take care.